New insight into the gunman behind the deadly shootings at two Chattanooga military facilities. Officials say that just a day before the rampage, that man researched martyrdom online. He also expressed an interest in Anwar al-Awlaki, a top al-Qaeda recruiter killed in a U.S. drone strike. Was he radicalized before this attack? Here this morning, David Gartenstein-Ross. He's a counterterrorism analyst and senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. David, great to have you here with us. Obviously, you've had a chance to sort of look through what we're learning about these final hours of this young man before this atrocious attack. When you look at his searches, his writings, where he traveled, what significance do you place on it? What do you see?
I think that he's clearly giving a religious significance to the attack. And let's be very clear about this. There's a few pieces of evidence that have been put forward in this regard. One of them is the fact that he texted a hadith to a friend of his. He started a blog online in which he talks about how, for example, the Sahaba, the companions of Muhammad, all conducted jihad during their lifetime. And these searches and his interest in Anwar al-Awlaki. Now, a lot of the discussion that's occurred in the debate about what really motivated him comes down to a question not so much of what significance was he trying to give the attack when he carried it out, but rather what is the psychological process by which he reached the conclusions that he did. And that's a much more difficult question than where he would place the attack in terms of the category of what he's trying to say with it.
In all the research they've done so far, authorities haven't been able to connect communications to accomplices or any direct link to a terror group, although, as you said, seemingly inspired by Anwar al-Awlaki. Radicalization can take many forms and can look different, inspiration in different ways, can it not?
Absolutely. That's what my research on radicalization, I think what the best research on the subject suggests. Some radicalization tends to be along political lines. Sometimes it's based on personal issues. In this case, obviously, he suffered from depression. He had family issues. Sometimes it's based around ideology or religion. Sometimes it's based around sense of adventure. There are very distinct pathways, and they're also not exclusive of each other. Someone can have psychological problems and also be ideologically motivated or politically angry.
And we've seen that time and again, have we not?
Absolutely. Humans are complex creatures, and very infrequently do you have someone who's a complete monocausal being where there's one thing that clearly motivated them to the exclusion of all else.
We'll add to that, the family here in America was said to have been concerned about the friends that he was hanging out with and that he might have been abusing drugs, so they sent him to Jordan to other family there. That family there in Jordan now being interviewed and investigated. In fact, one of the uncles is said to be detained by Jordanian authorities. What do you make of that, and is that of importance to you, that trip to Jordan?
It certainly is of importance in the sense that it's something that should be looked into. There's this kind of surprise that he wasn't in touch with terrorists overseas, that he wasn't in touch with organizations as far as we know so far. But that's what radicalization used to look like. It used to be very much that people would radicalize face to face, that it would be someone in the corners of the mosque or someone that you'd run into in a community, and that online radicalization was the exception rather than the norm. Now it's become the norm, in part because of the way social media is being used these days. Now, we don't know what happened in Jordan. The fact that his uncle was arrested may be of no significance. It could be just a precautionary measure by authorities to try to get a sense of where he's coming from. Certainly, that's what the uncle's attorney has been saying. But looking at what happened in Jordan can provide some indication, and maybe it won't. Maybe a lot of his pathway and who got him there, who got Abdulaziz to this point, will remain mysterious.
David, I want to really quickly get you to comment on what we saw in a New York Times article, sort of talking about how ISIS has transformed into more of maybe a transformation into a functioning state, doing things like issuing identification cards, giving out fishing guidelines to preserve stocks, even going as far as to require cars to carry toolkits for emergencies. I mean, this sounds like a functioning, legitimate state. What is your assessment of that? And does it mean that we have to look at, the Western forces have to look at ISIS in a different way?
It certainly is highly bureaucratized. It's carrying out state functions. It's never, at least unless it changes in a major way, going to be recognized as a legitimate state under the state system because, quite simply, it's at war with anybody. It has made clear that it's at war with 100% of countries in the world who do not recognize its authority. But increasingly, we're going to see other non-state actors that take on the trappings of a state because the power of states is declining relative to non-state actors. So this is a crest of a wave to come, and not all of them are going to be as genocidal, as authoritarian, and the like as the Islamic State has chosen to be.
David Gartenstein-Ross, really great to have you this morning on New Day. Thanks so much for joining us.